listening to the Hunter Conservationist Podcast.
This seems to be the type of year where across the nation, hunting regulation changes are being proposed. They're being put out for public comment. Year to year, it varies across the country. Sometimes there's changes in certain jurisdictions that are small and minor, and others there's some pretty drastic changes. But there's a twist to that. And when it comes to migratory birds, the rules aren't just a province or a territory making a decision about changing the hunting of migratory birds within its jurisdiction. So we're going to dive into that and find out a little bit more. The process is shaped by the international treaty between the United States and Canada. It's been steering the conservation of migratory game birds, migratory birds, for almost a century now, probably almost right on a century. So today we're going to, as we say, pull back the curtains and find out how these hunting regulations on migratory game birds come about, how they're discussed at an international level, what changes are currently on the table or have been submitted across Canada. I think there's some interesting things happening. So if you're a hunter or hunter conservationist or somebody that's interested in policy and conservation of migratory game birds, this will be a good episode for you. And to help us break all this down is Jim Fisher, Vice President of Canadian Policy for Delta Waterfowl. So one of the sharpest minds in waterfowl and in Canada that we know of, and comes on our show. So we always learn lots of cool stuff. And I think we did this last time we got together and did a waterfowl podcast. And it was like there was a big lag time between having the discussion and when waterfowl season opened. So I was like, oh, geez, you get all talking about that. And then it's still, 6 months away. So looking forward to that, learning everything from you, Jim. Hey, everybody. It's Mark Hall, your host.
And it's Curtis Hall, the co-host. The Hunter Conservationist Podcast is brought to you by J. Martin Taxidermy. Just because hunting season feels a long way off doesn't mean you can't start planning and getting excited now. Maybe this is the year you finally book the hunt you've always dreamed about, or maybe you're just looking forward to your annual trip to the hunting cabin. Either way, it's worth thinking ahead about how you preserve the memory when it's all said and done. Look no further than J. Martin Taxidermy for just that. J. Martin Taxidermy is a family-run business owned and operated by Jesse Martin and his wife, Casey. Born and raised in the Okanagan Valley, Jesse grew up immersed in the outdoors, following in the footsteps of his father and grandfather. Surrounded by taxidermy from a young age, he learned that a well-crafted mount preserves more than an animal. It preserves the story behind the hunt. Based in West Kelowna, British Columbia, J. Martin Taxidermy operates out of a clean, modern facility and serves clients from around the world, specializing in shoulder mounts, rugs, life-size, half-life-size, to fully custom dioramas. Every piece is created with an emphasis on accuracy, detail, and lifelike realism. Fully certified and insured, they handle all permits, inspections, and international export, so your memories are preserved with the same care that created them. Quality mount is more than just something cool to look at. It's a story, a memory, conversation starter, and something that keeps the hunt close, even when you're back home. As always, big shout out, big thank you to Jesse at J. Martin Taxidermy for supporting the show.
Well, here's a question for both of you before we dive into the topic. So there's a program down in the United States. If you want to follow it on Instagram, it's called the Duck DNA Project. And it's taking strange colorations of ducks that hunters harvest across North America, primarily in the U.S. right now, and they're doing DNA on it, and then they report out on like the different birds that they tested. They have a picture of it, and then they tell you the percentage mix between subspecies or wild. Like here's one here. It's a mix between a wild mallard and a game farmed mallard. So this is getting to be a big kind of conservation concern, especially on the eastern seaboard. So here's a couple of mallards. They look pretty normal, but kind of just got a little weird coloration on the wings. That's probably what twigged the hunter. So that turned out to be 61% wild, 39% game farm. There's also the sister project to this one, which is on wild turkeys. And so I think it's just the wild turkey DNA You'll find that on Instagram as well. I've actually got a turkey coming up in that program. So I got a white turkey last year. So I'm going to find out if it's a mix, 100% wild or 100% domestic or somewhere in between. So it's exciting. Here's the question for you. If you got a bird that was weird colored, like a duck, and you found out it was part domestic mallard, would you still get it mounted?
Probably. I think if the coloration was cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, something, a good conversation piece, I guess, if you got something. There's all kinds of reasons for it. Could be domestication, it could be albinism, or it could be hybridization between species too. So yeah, you get a lot of, not a lot, but a rare occasion you get something that's a little different.
Yeah. Like the hybridization one is cool, like that's just a nature doing nature kind of thing. So like I'm just looking at one here. This one is this duck is that they tested was 51% ring-necked and 49% lesser scalp. So wild bird, but I'm just kind of wondering, if you went, it mated with somebody's farm duck, does it kind of be, you'll still eat it, but it's kind of like, I can't really mount that and put it on the wall. And people are like, oh, so you shot the neighbor's farm duck or something. I got teased about the white turkey. And it was Matt Besco from Alberta's like, so you shot grandma's turkey, did you? And I'm like, it could be wild. Like could be color morph or whatever. And he's like, nah, it's grandma's turkey. So
yeah, classic.
So I'm not getting it mounted. I got the tail and stuff, but I just thought that would be an interesting twist for folks to think about if you found out that your weird colored bird was only half wild, if that would take any of the flavor off of you spending some money getting it mounted. So, but could come from a cool hunt. Maybe it's a conservation hunt. Yep, just getting them genes out of the pool.
That's
so
right.
just and I'm gonna. It's like an award on my wall. It was like that's the one that saved the duck race. Jim, thanks for coming back on the show. Really, it's always a pleasure chatting to you about waterfowl stuff and everything that you're involved in. I just love what Delta does across all of North America and some great stuff. You're focused on policy, but then you're out there, doing habitat work and research and getting nest boxes, up in wetlands and stuff to improve brood survival. So it's just across the board, true conservation organization when you got your fingers in a little bit of everything. So what's happening across the nation that you were involved in that came to light on potential changes if they get approved for hunting various migratory birds? I understand they're not all ducks and geese.
Yeah, no, it's a real large suite of programmatic changes that the federal government has proposed this cycle. So every 2 years, there's an opportunity to kind of modify the regulations, and this year there's a real array of stuff kind of across the country, across a bunch of species, some new species, some expansion of relatively new seasons, and so on and so forth. And so it's fairly, aside from I think about 2 cycles ago, they did the big modernization package that was another serious decade-long effort to move the needle on a bunch of important fronts, and that was very successful. And so this time around is very similar to that, with a heck of a lot of work has gone in by Canadian Wildlife Service and the provinces to see the suite of changes coming forth. So I don't know how you want to start, Mark. It's kind of a long list. We could work west.
Hey, up to you. Yeah, east to west, west to east, whatever. Start in the middle and come back and go the other direction. That's probably the most fair to Canadians.
Sure, we could start in the center. Start in the center of the universe in Ontario. Sure.
Whatever you want.
There are a lot of changes for Ontario. There's one really interesting one whereby the province passed the puck on the Sunday hunting front in Ontario, as you may be aware. Unlike every other province, it just kind of went province-wide. Ontario said, well, we're going to leave it up to the municipal level of government to determine if they want to opt in for allowing Sunday hunting. So that's been over a decade, I believe, that they decided that. And so if you look at a map initially with, virtually no Sunday hunting, and then a bunch took it the first year, and that map continues to get shaded in over time. And interestingly, what the feds had done, so because of the areas that did not have, that you couldn't hunt on Sundays, those were lost days in theory for the hunting season. So what the feds did was they offered compensatory days for the areas that wouldn't allow Sunday hunting. So they actually, and in this case, they provided a kind of a midwinter, late winter opportunity to hunt geese for 7 or 8 days. I don't know exactly the number, somewhere in there.
Maybe just explain that, because under the treaty, the countries have agreed to hunt waterfowl only X number of days.
Yeah, they're allowed
in a year. And
so what depends on which jurisdiction you're in, but across the board for Canada, it's 107 day.
Okay.
107 days is allowed outside of conservation seasons like snow geese are on top of that. But anyways, so Ontario they wanted to retain those number of days. So they said, okay, well, look, if you're opting out on the Sunday, we can add up all those Sundays throughout the season. And then they gave a special goose season for those jurisdictions. And that happened kind of February, March, and it became very popular. So it was like, everyone's kind of cooped up, as we can kind of relate to right now in February. And so it became very popular. So when it came time for municipal discussions around enabling Sunday hunting, which I think most hunters want, there was actually hunters showing up at the meeting saying, no, we don't want Sunday hunting here, because they loved that goose season so much that they didn't want to give it up.
Okay,
kind of
I'm
starting off on a really complicated one here.
No, this is awesome. This is awesome.
So there was discussion of, well, gee, if we want that, if that season's so popular, why not just offer it? And that's certainly possible. So what they've done is they're proposing now a 7-day season for all jurisdictions. So get rid of the compensatory model, take 7 days off the regular season, push it off to that late season for everybody. And again, it's certain wildlife management units that this it's proposed to be allowed, but a lot of the southern part of Ontario where the geese would be there at that time of year. So anyway, I hate to kick it off. I probably should have picked a simpler one, but maybe we're good to get that one off while my brain's still functioning well. But
that's good. Yeah, to understand the math that's involved in juggling seasons.
And so Delta worked with OFAH, Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, and we did a survey to kind of provide information. So Delta played a bit of a role there, sent out these surveys, and we got information back of, well, if you're going to do stuff like this, do hunters want this, to what extent? And the numbers came back, and it was kind of really, well, a lot of people wanted it. So it was kind of a no-brainer. Any of these surveys, you're never going to get 100% of people agreeing on anything. But I think it was over 80% of hunters who were in the survey said, yeah, we think this would be a great option for all of us to get that. So anyway, so that's the first one. I don't know if we need to talk any more about that. We can move on to other things. The other, there's some other tweaks with a couple or one of the other WMUs as far as going to 3 to 5 Canada geese limits, which is a small tweak. And then the bigger one is there's an option for a crane season. A lot of discussion around that one. Where the feds do not have they cannot issue tags. So initially there was thought, well, you'd issue so many tags. The feds said, well, we can't do tags. So what they ended up landing on was a 1 bird daily bag limit for 2 weeks only, in a very kind of restricted, only, I believe, on farm properties and only in kind of I guess they call it the central part of Ontario. And they also added a sliver kind of going east into Quebec as well. So the proposal is to see parts of Quebec, certain zones there, and certain areas in Ontario to get that 2-week season, and the possession limit is 1. So in theory, they're saying, well, you could only shoot 1 kind of per person.
So that would be 1 for the season, or 1 a day for 14 days?
Yes. So
Okay.
the way I like to, my cheeky way of saying, yeah, I think the intention
So
is it's
you may
supposed to
be allowed to shoot between 1 and 14.
Yeah, like I said, the intention is for it to be kind of a special. It's kind of meant to be a tag thing, but I don't think they're going to worry too much about, if someone were.
Well, is there like a population concern? Or are those, what's the area down in the United States where all the cranes congregate and there's like 700,000 of them on this one?
Yeah, and I'm not an expert on crane numbers, but there's kind of, like a lot of things, they kind of split populations up. So there's an eastern population of crane.
Yep.
And then there's a mid-continent population of crane. And so you're thinking of the big migration through the Platte River in Nebraska.
Platte River
in March.
And then they go down to the Gulf. Yeah.
That's like a bucket list, I think, for any serious hunter - conservation birder.
Okay.
Destiny.
Because I was thinking if Southern Ontario was part of that flyway,
yeah, it's interesting.
It's like 1 a day sounds pretty weird when they got millions of them.
It's complicated because the western part of Ontario, obviously Ontario is a massive place, but the western part, I think there's a mix of both eastern and mid-continent cranes going through there. But I think most of the areas that are being considered for central and eastern Quebec or western Quebec will be those eastern birds. So those are not the Platte River birds. But anyway, there are a good, the population of those eastern cranes is very high. It's way above, in both cases, actually, we're going to talk about what mid-continent cranes too. There's some expansion there. But both populations of cranes, I was jotting down the numbers, but they're both way above kind of the objectives, population objectives, like double or triple what they're kind of saying. So crane populations are, interestingly, they only really lay 2 eggs, and normally one hatches or one survives. And so, I mean, their reproductive effort is much different than waterfowl species that lay multiple, and anyway, because cranes feed the young and everything. And so it's a different model, but they are doing extremely well. And they have been, in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, the seasons where you can shoot 5 per day, date back to 1971, I believe. So it's great. I mean, there's been a lot of interest in crane hunting in Ontario for a long time, and this is not gonna, there's a lot of people in other parts of Ontario that have seen a lot of cranes. They're not going to get a season. That's just, sometimes you have to walk before you can run, and this will kind of start the process to see and go, okay, what's gauge the interest and participation? Perhaps at some point in the future it gets expanded. I don't know.
Yeah. The cranes are an interesting one because I've seen a little bit. It tends to evoke certain sentiments in the non-hunting public that follow this stuff. Like, whatever it is sort of like, yeah, good with a duck, yeah, good with a Canada-U.S. And then all of a sudden, like a crane, it's like you're asking to hunt a critically endangered species or something. It's one of those things where I don't know, its place in society is different than a duck or a goose. And I've seen some, darn hunters now they want to kill. Who would want to kill a crane? Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's that, and that will come up maybe on a few of the other things we're going to talk.
Yeah, I've heard it on a few of the other species as well. So
yeah, so just maybe to bounce around a bit across the country, cranes are also being looked at as far as a new opportunity. So it's a new opportunity in Ontario and Quebec, but Northwest Territories and Nunavut as well. It's proposed to have seasons there. So that will be a new thing. In the Yukon, there is existing crane season. I'm not really up on it all, but certain parts of Yukon you can hunt cranes and some parts you can't. But anyway, and then in Alberta, there's, the season opened a few years back now. Thankfully, that one took a long time. And they're looking at kind of expanding the area of Alberta where you can hunt. And I think, I don't even know why they didn't do that at the start. Again, they probably said, look, let's just get it here. And it could be related to whooping crane migration. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's what I remember in Alberta is closer to the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. There were the zones where the whooping and the sandhills would be moving together. But if you move out east out into the prairies a little bit, the whoopings drop out. If I'm remembering right.
And there may be,
and then so they just felt it was a safer place to start.
I think, I don't know if it's new data or they just looked at things a little more careful. And, once they got the season, then that's great. And now I'm pretty sure there's, they're not stepping into an area that's full of whooping cranes. I think the whooping cranes are going from that wood buffalo and then going kind of east and not really hitting much of central Alberta whatsoever, as far as I know. Again, I'm not studying this personally, but just this is what I hear.
They're getting some more wildlife management units in Alberta that are proposed to be open. Okay.
Yep. And so that's good. Great. And then so just going maybe to finish off kind of the eastern stuff. There's one other significant change is in Nova Scotia. Delta's worked with CWS and the provinces. We've got a number of things we've changed the last couple of rounds. They were not taking advantage of their 107 days. And so we got actually, I think in PEI between Sunday hunting and going to a full 107-day season, they gained something like 30 days of waterfowl hunting, which is tremendous. And so Newfoundland has Sunday hunting now. That's a new thing. PEI got it. Minister Holland in New Brunswick got it. And Nova Scotia was the last domino to fall across the entire country. And so this was the first year kind of on a provincial side to get Sunday hunting. And with that expansion, there's two zones in Nova Scotia, the southern zone, like you'd expect. The birds are there later. So there's a real push. A lot of our chapters and duck hunters at large and goose hunters specifically want to see the season go till the end of January. So we've got that pushed back with this 107-day thing. So I believe, the 22nd of January now for duck season, wanting it to go to the end. And so anyway, we got a small extra move this year in the federal package to see the goose season end on the 22nd of January as well. So that'll be 1 week again, kind of taking it from the regular season and pushing it to the tail end when there's a lot more geese around. So none of those. Not
good for those folks.
These are just tweaks, nice to dos, and no one's going to get to.
Those really sound like ones that are grassroots driven up. That's people that are on the ground, knowing the birds are coming in, going, Sunday the season closes, and they're like, geez, next week there's going to be 10,000 of them here. Like if we could only get another.
And unlike us in the prairies, where the tail end of the season doesn't matter. Like our season here in Manitoba goes into December, and I mean the real diehards can maybe find a few ducks to chase, but I mean whereas if you go down south, they pushed it to go to the end of January 20 years ago now, and that was thought to be a big thing, and they'd like it to keep going, right? But later, anyway, that's a very common thread there.
I know our season here in southern BC goes to the 23rd of December, and a few times, depending on the year, you go down on the big water where the birds, and you're the only living thing in the valley is the dog and I. So,
yeah. So those are the ones kind of covering the eastern part. Shifting to, I guess, to the prairies, there's nothing. So those other provinces in the east, there's really no changes. There's some tweaks with woodcock seasons and PEI or something like that, but nothing too major there. And then shifting to the prairies, there's significant
woodcocker
stuff.
Under the migrant. So that is, today I learned something I didn't know they were covered under the treaty.
Yep. Yeah, wow. They sure are. And it's a massive deal for a lot of places in the eastern part of the continent.
Oh, definitely. As a game, I thought they were just like an upland game bird, like the rough grouse or whatever. They were managed that way, but I didn't realize that they were
Yeah, because they're migratory. Obviously, roughies.
I mean, it makes sense.
Roughies can fly from the ground to the tree, but yeah, they're not.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because they do depend on wetland habitats and more moist stuff. So makes sense. Once things are frozen, it's like gotta go south.
Yeah, wet forested pasture or whatever. Yeah, that's and we actually have a season here in Manitoba, but that's as far west as their distribution goes in Canada.
Okay, interesting.
And but anyway, so in the prairies, there's a push to. And so these other things we've talked about so far would all be in place for this coming fall. Okay, so it's a bit confusing again, in that some of the stuff will be in place for 2026 fall. The things I'm going to talk about now are kind of sending a signal that the feds are looking at dove seasons and swan seasons for the three prairie provinces.
Okay.
So starting with doves, interestingly, British Columbia led the way. They had a mourning dove season, I believe, dating back to 1960.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in our area. I hunt them a little bit each year. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thanks by the way. I'm glad we had that, because
probably the only one in the province that hunts them.
Yeah, but probably, and it's you have to look at all the different zones, and then you find, okay, it's actually available just a small part of BC. But luckily we had that. And then in Ontario and Quebec have brought in dove seasons. Now I'm losing track of time, but probably 10 years ago-ish. I could have looked it up, but it doesn't matter. But anyway, so that was not without controversy. Again, just like the crane thing in Alberta, took a lot of time, a lot of consternation. When you bring in new species, there's always challenges. But anyway, so luckily we got that happened in Ontario and Quebec, and it's been very successful. And in Manitoba, there was a run at this probably 15 years ago, and it failed. It actually got public pushback at the last minute, and the minister got cold feet, and they pulled it. And so anyway, so now the feds are leading a charge to see this. So we'll start with mourning doves, and there's of course a lot of mourning doves. It's the number one migratory game bird that's as far as harvest, as far as numbers go throughout North America. There's a lot of birds. I'm just looking up the fall population. So of course, there's a number of, like everything, there's so many birds migrate in the spring, set up shop, have the breeding season, and then hopefully there's more in the fall. And that's so the estimates in the fall are 2 million for Manitoba, 5 to 6 million for Saskatchewan, and 1 to 1.4 million for Alberta. The estimate that Canadian Wildlife Service has kind of crunched the numbers on hunter numbers and expected participation. The harvest ranges between 3 and 10,000 by province. So 3 for Manitoba, 6 for Saskatchewan, and 10,000 expected to be harvested in each of those 3 provinces. And if you run the numbers on that, Alberta obviously at 10,000 is higher than the other 2, so that's 2% of the population would be harvested. And for Saskatchewan and Manitoba, it's 0.3%. So minuscule harvest. Normally I'm a little bit more familiar with the duck metrics, and usually with ducks, we're consistently harvesting less than 10%. Like the goal is to harvest 10% or less, kind of thing. And populations remain stable, and
and doves, you're talking 0.3%.
Right. So it's not going to be a massive impact on the population at that level. And doves are very prolific. They nest multiple times, so the females can pull off they can fledge some young, and then they can lay another nest and fledge some more young, and so they can kind of keep going right from when they start, probably early May, let's say, and they could be nesting right actually into September. So they're very prolific.
And one of the things I've noticed is, for a game bird, the difference between a young of the year and an adult dove, because you can't tell when there's when it goes whipping by, you just you shoot. There's not a significant difference in the size by the time the young of the year are like I'm going to say 75 to 80% the size of the adult birds. And when I first started, it wasn't until I got an adult bird, I was like, oh, this is a young of the year. That's an adult bird. So, size wise, to get your meat off of them and stuff, and they're prolific, you're harvesting young of the year as well. You're not losing a lot on those guys because they do grow pretty good.
Yeah, and they are just fantastic. I've had the benefit of hunting a few times in different places that allow it. So in the U.S. and
it's great.
They're phenomenal eating. So yeah, it's obviously a small bird, but I mean, so are some of our ducks and other things. So it's
yeah, when you start looking at a teal, I mean, teal's a little bigger, but you're getting into that realm. A woodcock,
yeah,
like it's fun. You get a bunch of them. It's a meal, a lot of fun. It's a completely different type of hunting. Different, whistles and noises that they make and habitats that they occupy and the way they lift off the ground and roost, and it's just a lot of fun.
and in the prairies, there's a lot of them. They love canola fields. If we get the season, canola is a very prolific crop in the prairie provinces, and so there'll be plentiful opportunities and plenty of doves to harvest. So anyway, so that's a dove thing.
But it is a challenging one. I was thinking about this before, like a dove, just the name, right? What comes to a person's mind? You think of the white dove, love doves.
Peace.
It's the symbol of the United Nations, right? So the mourning doves we're hunting are not white, like they don't have the little like fig leaves or whatever in their mouth and solving world crises. They're a pinkish gray color. Very beautiful little birds, and white little fans on their tail and whatnot. So, it's not the peace dove, but the name, I think, almost in itself could kind of trigger some folks if you say you're going to hunt a dove.
Yeah. Well, and we get this. So the next one I'm going to talk about is swans, and we have the same.
Yeah, that's another one.
Not more issues. Maybe we'll just lay out the numbers for the swans, but for the proposal, and again, doves and swans are proposed for the 2028 season. So we got time to everyone to think about it, and come up with a plan going forward. But so for the three prairie provinces, the number of tags would be 400 for Manitoba, 600 for Saskatchewan, and 500 for Alberta. I wasn't privy to why they didn't just say, let's do 500 each. Probably related to hunter numbers, I would presume. Anyway,
now we're talking about the tundra swan exclusively?
That's right. So these are tundra swans. There are other species of swans. Interestingly, there's a mute swan and causing all kinds of problems in the Great Lakes, and people are not allowed to harvest them there. That's a whole nother kettle of fish. That, at some point, maybe that might change for Ontario. And certainly there's lots of tundra swans in Ontario as well. So they have a keen eye on this one as well, as how it goes in the prairies. But, and there's a lot of moving parts to this. Interestingly, these 1,500 tags will be kind of a reclamation of the allocation that Canada has forgave. So hard way to say it, but anyway, so in the U.S. right now, they're using Canada's allocation because there are no open seasons in Canada. So when we're talking about these 400 to 600 tags per province, that would be less tags available for our U.S. friends. So the overall harvest, in theory, won't change, assuming success rates are similar.
Yeah.
So it won't result in any additional kind of harvest of cranes or swans. Sorry.
Okay. So we didn't even have tundra swan seasons in the Northwest Territories, or none of it? Yukon? Really? Wow.
No. I mean, our Indigenous friends certainly, would take some swan,
Yep.
But licensed hunters, non-Indigenous folks aren't allowed to shoot.
Yeah. And because it's kind of a big thing in Alaska, if I read the situation right, the tundra swans.
I think there's
people just
12 or 14 states. Probably the most famous is North Carolina, is Lake Mattamuskeet is kind of a epicenter of swan hunting culture. But I mean, it's just south of us here in North Dakota. It's a thing, and I know like a number of my colleagues out of our North Dakota office go, they get a tag and they go out and try and get one, and it's kind of a, for some it's a trophy thing, for other people it's table fare, and obviously they're eating the same stuff as canvasback. They eat the sago tubers, sago pondweed tubers, and they're great to eat. So I've heard. I've never had the opportunity to try one, but so I'm excited about it. And
absolutely,
the swan dove thing is, we're seeing stuff in the media right now, kind of pushing back against it, including some of our colleagues, former colleagues. So it's an interesting conversation when you have hunters.
And I've been told some hunters in some jurisdictions are not warm to the idea.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, my philosophy is like, yeah, well, maybe I won't go for swan. My example would be for me personally, I'm not gonna probably go bear hunting, but I'm fine with everybody else going.
Yeah,
and so we all have our interests and our where we philosophically say yes to this and no to that. But as hunters, boy, it's dangerous, I think, if we get too divided on these things and start kind of making our choices and publicly speaking out against something when we're few in number, and we certainly need to stick together on all fronts, and it's
and
not
even just from an argument or a philosophical perspective, you may have certain feelings where, I don't want to hunt a dove. They're tiny little things. It's like shooting a robin. I'd feel bad, like whatever. Okay. But at the end of the day, like, it's a bird. It's a wild bird, thick size, if you're going to hunt it, doesn't matter whether it's an ostrich or a little dove. Like, it's a living animal. It's a living wild animal, and that's what hunting does. So if you're hunting species over here and you're harvesting and killing wild animals, and over here, it's really no different. Like, for me, I've never said one animal is on a moral pedestal than another. I recognize that different species have different biology and ecology. Some are more sensitive to harvest than others, so we're more careful. Mallards, it's kind of a free-for-all, or mountain goats are be a little more careful, your population and your older males, whatever. But at the end of the day, like a mountain goat or a mallard or a stone sheep versus a rough grouse, same thing. Animal's an animal. Just out there trying to make a living.
No, that's right. And we all have our interests and passions and ethics. But as a group, we
should support each other.
Theoretically, we should be all on the same page as far as supporting. And when we get divided, kind of thinking back to the spring bear hunt, when we have some of our own hunters saying things, it has a massive impact on the public. And we're seeing that right now, unfortunately. And I don't want to, everyone has their opinion, and that's great. It's nice. We live in a free country, so I'm not at all saying they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. It just, for me, it's just a bit disappointing when we're going public with some of the statements that have been made. So,
and he just is, how human beings are. The opposition in the hunting community, like say something like the tundra swan thing, could be, for example, the season's going to open in wildlife management units, this one and that one, and somebody's like, well, that's not the units that I hunt. So why do they get it and I don't? And so I'm opposed to them getting it, right? Like, that's not like that's not ever happened in the history of of hunting regulations for and against, because it's what's in it for me kind of thing. But
so anyway, biologically and scientifically, the evidence is real clear. We got robust populations of swans. We have robust populations of doves. The harvest is going to be well within, responsible harvest management thresholds.
Yep. And science-based, and how can you not?
That's right.
People are putting them on their table. So how can you not, not support that? So, but Hey, if you're listening to this and you totally object to one of these things, reach out, because I'd kind of like to know what a serious objection would be from the hunting community to be able to hunt a few more species. So interesting.
Yeah, so it's I commend the Canadian Wildlife Service for
Wow.
pushing us forward. This huge suite of things, some challenging, some straightforward, some needing, a lot of research and background work and surveys and all kinds of stuff. So it's a lot of work.
It's good to point that out, because I think everywhere you turn, the federal government's getting beat up over something. And I think it's important to separate what goes on the Hill in parliamentary debate and all the politics of things versus the biologists like at Canadian Wildlife Service. And, like they've been there for their whole careers, they're doing things, they're collecting numbers, they're making scientific decisions, generally, have a supportive ethos of the hunting community and heritage in this country. So yeah, like don't don't beat those folks up, because they're definitely, I think, advocates for migratory game bird hunting. So
well, whether it's the folks in the federal bureaucracy or the provincial governments, and whether they're staffers or politicians, guess when they hear from us all? When they do something we don't like. And
yeah,
when we do have success, it's probably even more important to reach out and say, hey, thank you. Even if
you.
something fails, you should say thank you, because they don't hear that. And it's a thankless job often, especially ministers at that upper level. I couldn't do it. I'm
Totally.
not that strong. I'm too thin-skinned, I guess, or something. But yeah. So yeah, I always thank
that could wear you down.
any politician I ever meet. I thank them, and certainly on the staff levels. And so, kind of related to that, I think, yeah, I don't know, Mark, we've pretty much touched on all the proposed changes. The only other one of significance, I should say, is the signal to go to all electronic duck stamps. So of course I just call them the duck stamp, but it's the permit and the stamp. The permit goes to fund CWS's monitoring and, counting ducks and doing harvest estimates and stuff. And then of course the duck stamp, kind of half and half, goes to Wildlife Habitat Canada to do the good work that they do. So anyway, so they're looking at going to an all online. So we've traditionally, we never had any online, and over the years it's kind of shifted, and now we're kind of over 50% of, I don't know the exact numbers, but for sure around 50% or a bit more, I think, of people are buying them online. Of course, a lot of people traditionally would have went to the post office or to a local hunting store or whatever to pick up your federal thing to hunt migratory game birds. So that signal, from my perspective, there's a reason I think that would be great. And the reason for that is, when you look at the numbers, I like to crunch numbers from Michel Genron from CWS in Quebec. He tracks all the hunter numbers and he does a lot of this, the wing bees and different things for the feds. And when you get those numbers, they're often missing. There's no data on where the person resided. You sold the stamp, but you don't know who actually bought it or where they were. So the data is off by about, I think they're missing the details on about 10 to 14% every year, which is hard. Like, I love to try kind of keep track of hunter numbers over time. Like we know in 2024, there was 127,000 of us duck hunters. So just call them duck hunters, but it's all waterfowl, migratory birds. But again, we don't, to track it by province and get into the more details. I think the electronic stuff allows you to, have a much simpler, cleaner process versus someone buying one at a post office, and post office, not to belittle them, but I mean, it's hard work for them. It's not their job to sell hunting licenses per se. And anyway, so the downside, I think, is for the hunting shops that sell these, because I think when people go in to buy their duck stamp, they might pick up a box of shells or, look at that shotgun they've been coveting or whatever. So I kind of feel for them. But at the same time, a lot of the provinces have gone to entirely electronic licensing. I think it's time. Just my personal take on it.
modernization.
Yeah.
So there's probably some resistance from the real old timers out there that just like the physical,
That's right.
thing. So
It's
that's a bit of
again, we like
adjustment.
doing what we like doing. So yeah.
Yeah.
The nice
Yeah,
thing
exactly.
the nice thing is that, if, as I get older, Mark, maybe you could buy me my stamp because I won't be able to operate anything. But you can buy one for someone else, right? So that's as long as you have the
Okay.
pertinent information, you can buy them for a bunch of people. So hopefully
Yep.
you'd hate to see us lose, any hunters at this point because of not being able to get a duck stamp. So that's the small risk that we're playing with there. So
Yeah, no, makes sense. The other thing I wanted to get you to touch on was this overall decision-making process. So one of the ones that really stuck out was the tundra swan one, where you said like our allocation comes from the United States. So obviously making these decisions about migratory birds under the international treaty, they're going, between countries. So that's the whole idea, is the countries have got together and said, we're going to have this framework to manage continental harvest so that everybody gets their share, because you got, nesting and brooding habitat in Canada, and we got overwintering habitat down, in the southern states. So the species as a whole needs the continent, and the international boundary means nothing to these birds. That's kind of the premise behind the treaty from 1916 or whatever it was.
that's right.
So how are these decisions made? Like, how did we get the U.S. to give us the tundra swan tags? Like we said, like, hey, if you give you those, we'll give you the gold medal in the hockey game. Like, how did that work? Right? Like,
Yeah. No, it's interesting, and again, this isn't my day-to-day job. The basic premise from what I understand is, we share the harvest. So if you look at any species or group of species, it's kind of shared 50-50. So if we're saying, okay, well, our harvest estimates for a certain flyway, of the 4 flyways, they would say, okay, well, we're allowing 50% of the allowable harvest to be in the Mississippi flyway, as an example. Then you would look to the provinces to the north of that and say, well, they should get their share of 50%. And that, the quick take from that is, well, yeah, there's a reason we're allowed 8 ducks. So there's no states where you can shoot 8 ducks. The most liberal flyway, of course, is a Pacific flyway where they can shoot 7 ducks. But if you go east, it drops. So like the Mississippi and Atlantic flyway, they're allowed 6 ducks. But then if you were to look at, well, are they allowed 6 of any kind of duck like we are here for the most part in Canada? And the answer is, heck no. You have to, it's very complicated. If you were to pick up any state hunting regulations, and you'd see, okay, you're allowed, of your 6 ducks, you're allowed 5 mallards. And then of those 5 mallards, only 2 could be hens. And you're allowed 2 wood ducks, and you're allowed 1 pintail. I bumped it to 3 this past year, and I think in the parts of the Pacific flyway. But yeah, there's multiple species where it's not, if the limit is 6 ducks, there's probably 10 species that are less than that. So, and yet we know it's really confusing in that we know that a lot of hunters really don't know what the species of ducks that are flying by. So it creates a lot of problems, as you could imagine. I mean, most hunters know what a mallard looks like or a pintail, but when it comes to gadwall and scaup versus ringneck or whatever, right? It's
Yep.
And even, I mean, as my eyes get, as I'm older and stuff's flying by and the lighting's not great, I mean, I profess I'm not an expert anymore, or maybe I never was, but it's hard, right? So
I got to wait a lot longer than legal shooting light before I'm like, this is legal shooting light? Is, man, like, I can't even tell, right? Like,
yeah.
So I usually wait a little bit longer than most.
I'm going on a few tangents here, but back to the swans. So the harvest, again, for swans, theoretically, it's 50-50. So if they're harvesting 1,000 swans in the U.S., Canada would be, or if the overall harvest was 2,000, you'd split it. So right now,
Okay.
what's happened, because no Canadian jurisdictions have it, they're just getting the whole allocation. So it's not like we're taking away from them per se, but we're kind of reclaiming what is ours, or should be ours.
Yeah.
If we get the
And
season, right? We're not we're not there yet. That's
right.
still a process.
But it does make sense. If you don't use your portion, they should be allowed to harvest what is sustainable for
That's right.
that flyway. Like absolutely.
Yeah.
Hunters are hunters. It's like,
And again,
take
we're so conservative with our harvests that doesn't matter if they take the whole allocation or not. Yeah, it doesn't.
yeah, okay.
Not going to matter.
Okay.
Population wise.
Gotcha. Now, for things like this, do the countries have to get together in a meeting room and say, we're proposing this? And like, how does that work?
Yeah. So each of the flyways, so the 4 flyways, there would be certain provinces attached to different flyways. And they have, I think there's 2 meetings per year. Never been to the Central Flyway. I've been to the Pacific, Atlantic, and Mississippi Flyway meetings before. But it's all the states, the provinces, the federal governments from both places kind of gather. And folks from Delta, Ducks Unlimited, other interested parties would show up. And they have discussions. So there's, very specific populations talked about. So there'd be webless stuff that's talked about as far as conservation goes. There'd be, a session on wood ducks, and then there'd be a session for diving ducks and a session for black ducks, and then there'd be a session for sea ducks and different subpopulations of Canada geese, the ones that nest in the Arctic and different ones in Alaska. And I mean, it goes on and on. So there's, it's very well done. And so that kind of feeds into all the harvest or the population monitoring. So of course we do spring pair counts, right? So those are all done kind of across the continent. There's banding efforts, right? So Arctic banding efforts, Eastern Canada banding efforts. They're banding all these birds to try and get estimates of harvest. And with all that, you get estimates of, well, what hunters are getting. You're getting estimates of, you can kind of backcast to see how well the production was as far as in the wing bees, you get the wings, so you know if it was a juvie or an adult, and so all this stuff ties together, and it's relatively well funded by all the partners around the table. So each state and province and feds put in money, say for example, for an Arctic banding episode where you're paying a lot of money to hire a helicopter to buzz you around to catch geese up in the Arctic. That's one component of it. And then there's, the work that I work on these days is more within Canada. So I don't go as a representative of anything at this point. I used to go on behalf of Delta to these different flyway meetings. But so what Brian McRae and I, my counterpart in Ontario, we go to the 4 Atlantic provinces, the Canadian Wildlife Service. Their office for the Atlantic region is in Sackville in New Brunswick. So we would go usually a 1 in-person and 1 online meeting per year. So there's an April meeting there, parts of 2 days in person, talk about all their efforts that the CWS is doing there. They got great leadership there. And everybody's privy to all the workings, and all the partners know what the heck everybody's doing. It's well coordinated. And then these discussions come up about regulation. That's where our primary interest is in the hunting metrics. And then similarly in Ontario, there's an Ontario Waterfowl Advisory Committee that we sit on, and with all the other key players there. OFAH is there in the province and the feds. And so we talk about all the different opportunities and what's going on with populations and what we might do going forward. So that led to the changes that you're seeing both in Atlantic Canada and Ontario. And then in Manitoba, we have that, but it kind of breaks down for some of the other provinces, unfortunately. Not to say that the feds and the provinces aren't working together. It's just, it's interesting. They allow kind of outsiders like a Delta Waterfowl into the tent to see what's going on in some areas. And we'd like to see that. I don't think we're too threatening or anything. We'd like to kind of see that expanded to the rest of the provinces.
Interesting. Now, when it comes to some of these discussions like you're talking about, does Canada and the United States come to the table with, say, population numbers? Say like, so you're the tundra swan thing or the dove thing. If you're going to say, okay, we want to have a dove harvest in Alberta, do they say like, great, how many do you got? Because this is how many we have, and then they talk about what's a sustainable harvest, or is the science just being done along the whole flyway all the time, and then you sit down and talk about harvest or harvest allocation? How does that work in coming up with your baseline science to discuss?
Yeah, so I did write some of this stuff down. So the example on the swans, as an example, they split the swans again into a western population and an eastern population. The western population 3-year running average is 82,000 birds. So that'd be, I believe, the spring count. And they're saying if there's going to be a season, there's a threshold of 60,000. So at just over 82,000, you have a 20,000 bird buffer as far as, so they're kind of monitoring. So the joint efforts monitor swan populations. So a lot of, to be frank, like let's just say all the birds breed in Canada. Like, some of them are in Alaska. A lot of the funding to monitor those populations comes from the U.S., just to be honest. Okay. Right. And I'm not slagging anybody. It's just, that's the nature of it. And by the way, the U.S. is 10 times our size. So they're going to fund a lot of the stuff.
It's an amazing part of this model of how we manage migratory birds on this continent. Like, I absolutely love it when I'm way up in northern British Columbia and I see a sign for a wetland project, and there's the funding partners on the bottom, and it says U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Absolutely, it's unbelievable.
It's amazing. Like, I love it.
And so it's well done. And so and this is done for all the waterfowl that are hunted, basically, and all, including the other migratory birds that are hunted. Another example is the western population of cranes. The objective for that population is 350,000 to 475,000 birds. Currently, we're at 1,057,000. So we're more than double, perhaps triple, what the objective is for that population for western. So those are the cranes in the west. So the ones we're hunting in the prairie provinces. So they're doing extremely well. And we know that. And so if we were ever taken to court, the waterfowl management community, we have the science, right? So it's incredible. And this, it's kind of the envy of a lot of things. Like, how many rough grouse do we have? No one would have a hot clue, right? Good luck going to drumming some surveys and
moose.
We don't have money. The provinces are broke. They're barely able to cobble together enough to pull our big game seasons off, which are obviously massively important. But so the waterfowl,
we got these numbers on the smallest species birds that move quickly and migrate long distances, but we're arguing over gigantic things like moose, and we just don't have solid numbers in some of the provinces and territories in Canada on that.
We should do another podcast someday comparing Canada and the U.S. as far as how our wildlife management world.
Oh,
it'd be an interesting one, because the model we have in Canada, again, I am Canadian. I love Canada more than anything. Don't get me wrong. But at times I'm sort of envious of some of the financial wherewithal that the states and feds have to
I'm envious
things
all the time. I'm just like, boy, it's envious, not in the sense where it's like, oh, look what they, whatever. I'm like, good for you. Like, that's inspiring to get to the point where, at the highest political levels, to the Oval Office, to the average citizen in the United States, like, hunting is part of their heritage, and they value wildlife and they pay for it. They donate to causes. I just got back from Western Hunt Expo, where it was like one table of people bought between 4 and 5 mule deer conservation tags that were going from between $220,000 to $290,000 a piece. One family. And it's strictly because the money's going to conservation. I definitely envy that, and I'm absolutely thrilled that they have that.
I mean, there's lots of the Pittman Robertson Fund that's billions of dollars for anyway, excise taxes on rifles and everything.
Yeah,
we should do that someday.
Podcast.
No, to balance it off a little bit for us Canucky stands here, we got great hunting. Hey, like a lot of Americans might be a little jealous of the opportunities that exist here in our wonderful country.
100% agree there.
Well, anyways, we gotta balance this a little bit.
Yeah, I do think, when you see all these issues down in the States of like overcrowding, and God, you just see all those viral videos of like when shed antler season opens and they open the gates and there's like people are rushing on horses and they're trampling each other. And you're just sort of like, holy, like Canadians are like, yeah, we just go walk in the field or whatever and find them, right? Like my dog picks them up.
Yeah.
And, British Columbia, we're lucky even within Canada because it's like whatever 96 or 98% of the province is public land. Like we have not a lot of, compared to the prairie provinces for private land. So yeah, as long as we can keep wildlife abundance in this country, I would always pick us because of access and lower population, 100%. Cool.
But that's, it's good to know. It's good to be aware of what's going around in other countries, whether it's the U.S. or Europe or wherever, right? And try and look at how people are doing things in different jurisdictions, and maybe then you can try and implement some of those things in our backyard. So,
yep, absolutely, man. This has been exciting, and it's done almost exactly what I thought it would do. It's got me all thinking waterfowl hunting. I'm already ordering stuff from the fall. Like I've ordered some geese and mallard silhouette decoys. I got a new goose call.
Yeah, fantastic. Not a short read, I hope.
I did. I bought a Tim Grounds championship.
Man. You're a big time caller then. Yeah. I might.
Yeah. Well, I just no. No, I just wanted a nicer call and do, because I'm getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I kind of see the limitations of some of the calls. I could literally be like, it's a bit, but I can't buy them all, so I splurged and got a good one. But so I am way ahead of the curve thinking about this stuff. So now this has even got me more kind of thinking.
See, being a lucky person, other than terrible winters, in Manitoba we have a conservation season for Canada geese, as well as for snow geese, and turkey hunting. That's incredible.
A spring one?
Oh yeah, we have the trifecta like no one else here, here in Manitoba. So they have Canada's goes from when they show up, I suppose, March 1st till April 10th, and then the snow geese runs kind of throughout the spring. So
you could sit on a field in Manitoba with a really unique decoy spread and your shotgun and not be sure what could show up. Could walk out, could fland, could be white, could be a Canada, could be a big strutting Tom.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of fun. It's like, why is there a turkey out in that snow goose decoy spread? It's like, hey, you never know.
Yeah, they do overlap. That's for sure. Yeah, there's
very
snow
cool.
Geese are in the same places. Yeah,
I know in Alberta the daily bag in the fall was like 50 a day. And what's it like?
It's 50 in Manitoba and Alberta and 20 in Saskatchewan for snows.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
we won't get into that, but yeah, I've shot quite a few, but never 50. No,
never.
I know people who have, but yeah.
Really, I was just going to say I'm not sure if that's humanly possible, but
again, the U.S. there's no limit, so there's and you can take your plug out. But anyway, that's another.
Wow,
more
another podcast
talk about. Yeah.
Well, I love the idea of the comparing the two. It'd be kind of cool to get a bit of a panel together. Maybe get a few folks from down across the line and stuff like that, and kind of talk about these things. As fun as what it is, and kind of some of the things we joked about. To me, it's absolutely fundamentally critical to talk about the differences between the countries and stuff, because in conservation, you should always be looking to be very well informed about models for management and for funding as well, and be willing to then take that back and push and advocate for change when you see something that's better. You just have to know that there's different things being done out there, and look for something that might benefit us. So I think that'd be a great discussion.
I think there's incredible opportunities to have robust funding for good conservation projects across Canada, and tying in the hunting community directly through these, like the Pittman-Robertson excise tax on firearms and ammunition. It's one way, one model. The other thing is also the political. I don't know how you change the political system necessarily, but the way each state, the governor picks commissioners that are hunters, and they say, well, you'll be on the hunting commission or the wildlife commission. So they pick actual people from the community that make major decisions on conservation spending, on regulations, on everything. And then amongst the commissioners, they appoint the wildlife director. And guess who that ends up being? One of their own that again is a very passionate sportsman or woman.
Yeah.
So you end up with people in the right places that are that are like-minded for our interests.
That model's starting to go a little screwy in the Western U.S., Oregon, Washington, California. It's hitting Colorado, where these things are starting to happen, where you're actually like literally like in Oregon and Washington getting anti-hunters onto the commission.
Yes.
And they've done some things where they've actually stopped a bear hunt, I think in Washington State, where they just went, oh, guess what? You didn't, the director didn't submit a bear management plan by the 31st of March of the year. So by the letter of the law, you're not allowed to have a fall season. And they were right. And then that became the first step to like shut the bear hunting down. So yeah, there's pros and cons to the commission model as well, right? So all I've learned, British Columbia is one of them. Like there's just something about the west coast of North America where there's just kind of some weird things go on that maybe they shouldn't have that model. East and central would be good, but when it comes to politics and wildlife and anti-hunting and stuff, we should kind of keep that away from the West Coast. I don't know. Oh man, this has been awesome, Jim. Thanks. I learned a ton today, and I'm just excited for hunters from coast to coast to coast in this country when it comes between this fall and 2028 and some of the new and exciting opportunities for hunting migratory birds, big and small. So super exciting. Regardless of what your thoughts are around doves or swans, because they're big and white or whatever, support hunters in the area that this becomes a new opportunity, and be happy that we're gaining something in this lifestyle and not always losing it. So whether or not you ever hunt a dove, be happy for folks that do get the opportunity to do it. So
yeah, right on. Well said.
Jim, thanks. Curtis, take it away.
Right on. The Hunter Conservationist Podcast is brought to you by J. Martin Taxidermy. J. Martin Taxidermy approaches every piece as a one-of-a-kind project with real attention to anatomy, expression, and long-term durability. From classic shoulder mounts, life-size pieces, to waterfowl. He's got some pretty nice waterfowl mounts in his gallery. Euros, custom habitat work, the works. The focus is always the same, creating a mount that reflects the animal, the hunt, and the story behind it. Every mount is built by an avid outdoorsman and a conservationist who lives the lifestyle with his family. Check him out on social media. Facebook is J. Martin Taxidermy, Instagram, J. Martin Taxidermy, and his website is jmartintaxidermy.com. So go have a look at some of those waterfowl mounts, because he's got some... he does some nice work for sure. So as always,
excellent.
Big shout out, big thank you to Jesse.
I want to know what a life-size tundra swan, tilted, full flight, stretched out would square out at. Like how big a wall would you need for that? So I know somebody that got 2 Greater Canadas and they had that done and they got them back and they were like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's like 12 square feet or something like that. Jim, thanks. Pleasure. You give me a lot of great ideas for some more shows. I know we'll be back on here before the end of 2026, so look forward to it. And I'm been invited to Manitoba to go hunt there this year, so I think that's going to happen. Rob Olson says you got to come over here and hunt, so I think that's going to be happening. So looking forward to maybe catching up with you over there and
Yep.
learning about canvas back. So
he and I both have shooting camps on the Delta Marsh at Tin Town, so might see you out here. Yeah,
I would love to experience that. That's the heart of waterfowl hunting management and conservation in North America. So I will definitely, that's a bucket list. So all right, folks, thanks for listening, and we will catch you in the next episode. Hey, welcome to kind of the post-game analysis. As you gathered, I was everything waterfowl I get pretty excited about nowadays. I just love it. And we got to do another 1 or 2 waterfowl podcasts, or maybe in July, August. So it's a little closer to the start of the season to get excited about. But huge admiration for Jim and his knowledge and the work he does in Canada, and for Delta Waterfowl as an international organization on this continent. Just great work that they do. And I'm just excited about what's happening in this country that's adding migratory bird hunting opportunities. And I think the other thing folks have to realize as well is this is migratory hunting. You buy your migratory permit, you can go to Alberta and, hunt the doves when they have a season. You can go to Saskatchewan and go on the crane hunts, or whatever. This is all of us in this country. Yeah. It's not just Manitoba's moose or BC's stone sheep. This is everybody, coast to coast in this country hunting migratory birds. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
What do you got for folks? What you want to let them know about us and what we have on the go?
Yeah, we got, if you guys like this show, we got lots of other stuff on the go. We got a bunch of podcasts. We got the Truth About Fur podcast. We've got Project Grizzly Balance, the Alberta Conservationist podcast, the Round Canada podcast, and we have the latest one is Crossing the Line, which is a Canadian firearms podcast. So we got, lots on the go. It's all basically underneath where you're listening to this one right now on our channel, as you say.
Yeah, I tend to start using the language that the Hunter Conservationist podcast is a channel, and all of those shows that we're producing hang underneath of that channel. So you subscribe once to the Hunter Conservationist podcast, and you're going to get different shows covering different topics and themes show up in your feed, and you can pick and choose, by episode or by show, which is your interest. We will be adding another one this year as well, so stay tuned for that one. And it will be hosted by someone other than us, which is exciting as well. So that's coming down the line. So subscribe to the Hunter Conservationist podcast channel. We're also on YouTube, the Wild Origins Canada YouTube channel. We put up these shows as YouTube vids now, the podcasts as well. So if you like to watch rather than listen, they're there for you as well.
Cool.
Excellent. Last thing, just to close out, if you like what we do, Wild Origins Canada Foundation, our mission, all the work we do on the podcast, outside of the podcast. We got several film documentaries on the go this year. Super exciting there. Some conservation projects, irons in the fire, lots of grizzly bear stuff as well in Western Canada. Consider becoming a monthly supporter. So in the show notes here, or if you go onto our Instagram page, go to the link in bio, you can find a place to become a monthly supporter. So just for cost of a cup of coffee per month, you can become a monthly supporter. And that's hugely appreciated, even though maybe that doesn't seem like too much. it does. It makes a big difference to our mission, keeps us going, fuels what we're doing, and all of our monthly supporters are eligible for monthly giveaways that our global partners and brands donate stuff to us, even sometimes some hunts, through the parent organization, the Origins Foundation. So as a Canadian supporting us and our mission, money comes directly to us, but as part of the global family, you get a chance at some of these cool things that our partners in conservation make available for you. So love to have you join. Appreciate it. Keep us doing stuff here in Canada that not many folks are diving into the issues we do and fighting the fights that we are. So what's the next firearms policy podcast that you have coming up? Just a teaser.
It's
or maybe hit the highlights on, because you got a few recorded, 2 or 3, just kind of general.
Yeah. I've got a one from a business owner, local business owner, talks about how the Bill C-21 and the subsequent firearms bans have affected you get to see basically the economic side of what's happening. There's some pretty big numbers actually for a small business in lost revenue and just what they had to do and the process. Couple new people getting into firearms that are pretty passionate about it, that are sharing their side of coming into it as a new person. So those are
a new firearms owner in the country. Okay.
Yeah, probably be one of those coming out shortly after this one airs. So.
Sweet.
Yeah.
No, it's a great show. I think you're filling a very important position in the firearms conversation in this country that's not currently being filled. Very educational, very much about people and demystifying the process of owning a firearm and who people are that own a firearm. So I love it, and hope folks that are subscribed to the Hunter Conservationist podcast channel follow and like it as well. So,
totally.
All right, folks, thanks for listening to the little debrief, and we will see you in the next episode.